So given any triangle, there are three methods to solve for a triangle. We've covered number one, where we have a right triangle, and the methods that we used to solve for missing sides and angles of a right triangle included Pythagorean theorem and right triangle trig, which I'm going to use the acronym SOHCAHTOA because that's usually what students will think of when they think of right triangle trig. So SOHCAHTOA. And if the triangle was not a right triangle, we have two methods that we would use to solve for an oblique triangle. So method 2 is what we're going to cover today, specifically case 1. Case 2 we will cover in the next video, but case 1 is what we call the straightforward case. So given two situations, you have a triangle, one triangle, and within that triangle you're given an angle, two angles, and then a side that's not included. In another situation for case 1 would be if you're given two angles and the side that's in between. Think back to geometry from last year. If you're given two angles of a triangle, can you figure out the third? The answer is yes. Simply by just subtracting the sum of the two angles from 180, we would be able to find the third angle. So this is what leads to us concluding that this is a straightforward case. There's only one situation in which those parameters, those angles and the sides that were given to you, results in a single triangle. And so this is a straightforward case. We'll talk about the ambiguous case in the next video. And with the law of sines, you'll see down below here that the law of sines is provided for you in the box. So you'll remember or recall that there's two ways of writing it. One is you see the ratio with the sign on top and then the side lengths across from that on the bottom. So when we're solving law of sines, we're either going to be using, let's say, that part of the ratio or that part of the ratio, or the sine of A over A equals sine of C over C. So those are various ways that we can use to set it up, but this is written just to show that it's all equivalent. When we have a fraction, one of the properties of proportions is that you can just flip and make it the reciprocal, and it's still equivalent so long as all of the fractions are set to the reciprocal value. So this is also true. So we're going to do the straightforward case in these 4 examples. I'll do 2 with you and give you the answer and have you guys try out 2 on your own. How do I know it's the straightforward case? In the straightforward case that was detailed above, you'll see that you're given 2 angles and then one side. And it doesn't really matter if it's angle, angle, side, or angle, side, angle, but just to distinguish between the two for your own notes, the first example, you see that this is an angle and the side that's not included. So that's the angle, angle, side situation. We'll go over one of those examples. And then number 3, you'll see that you have an angle, a side that's included, and then an angle. Both of which, the straightforward cases are straightforward in that you can find the third angle pretty easily. So I'm going to switch over to pink to show that these are values that I calculate. So that top angle is 60 degrees. Now then what I do with law of sines is I can use law of sines so long as I have information on the angle and the side across from that. And that's going to jumpstart my proportion. So sine of 40 over 12 is equal to, and then since sometimes they'll ask you to solve the entire triangle, which means you have to find all of the missing lengths and angles, but in this case they want me to find just what x is. So with the 80-degree angle, I can set up the rest of my proportion to be sine of 80 over x. We're going to cross multiply from here, and we're going to leave all of our answers in calculator ready form unless there is a description for us to round to the nearest tenth. I would suggest that you guys leave as you're solving for it, leave it until the very end before you punch it into the calculator. So for this one, after I divide by sine of 40 on both sides, I get x is equal to 12 sine of 80 divided by sine of 40. when you enter it into your calculator, it's really, really important. So I'm going to go ahead and make it a different color, that you put parentheses around the 12 sign of 80 and then hit the division symbol. Then at that point, enter in sign of 40. Your calculator does PEMDAS, so it would give you a different answer if you guys were to enter in 12 sign of 80 without the parentheses around it to signify quantity. So at the very end, if you're then asked for it rounded to the nearest tenth, that's when I would write x is equal to 18.4. Okay, so only at the very end would you round. And then this is what we call calculator ready form, which as you guys move on to higher level math, it's sometimes preferred to leave it in calculator ready form because it doesn't mess with the accuracy of the actual answer. So we're going to go ahead and I will give you the answer for x for 2. If you want to hit pause and see if you understand how to get 7.7, feel free to. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to number 3, where you have an angle side angle. So once again, once you know 2 angles, you can find the third angle easily by adding the first 2 angles and subtracting it from 180. So we get, again in pink, I'm going to show that we get 37 degrees by subtracting from 180. And then from there, we're asked to solve for x. And I'll make note of the fact that x is across from sine of 52 and 20 is across from 37 degrees. So I'm going to start with my 20 because that's the only side that I actually have information on. So sine of 37 over 20 is equal to sine of 52 over x. If you go ahead and solve, you get 20 sine of 52 equals, I always put x in front because I don't want people to think it's sine of 37x. So x times sine of 37, and then divide both sides by sine of 37. Enter that quantity into the calculator, making sure that we have parentheses around the top. Divide by sine of 37, and round it to the nearest tenth, I should get 26.2. And for the last one, when you solve for that one, you get x equals 30.4.